friends, and welcome to What the Fringe, the podcast dedicated to all things Fringe theater. I'm your host, Lauren Hance. Each week, I visit with a Fringe artist to hear all about their endeavors and gain insight into their process. This week, I'm visiting with Michael Trauffer of The Pink List. 1957, West Germany. The battle against the Nazis ended 12 years ago, but for Karl, a gay concentration camp survivor, the war never truly ended. Still criminalized under Nazi law, his life is on trial. The Pink List is a haunting one-person musical inspired by the untold stories of gay men persecuted in post-war Germany. It explores the long shadow of fascism and how it continues to live on in laws, institutions, and everyday life. Following acclaimed runs at the Edinburgh Fringe, Fringe World Perth, and Adelaide Fringe, The Pink List now comes to the Orlando Fringe in 2026. This is the story of one man, one voice, and one list they hoped we'd forget.
Obviously, you could argue that a show like The Pink List should be a straight play. It's almost disrespectful of the subject matter to put light moments into it. But I disagree with this view. I think every life has light moments, no matter how crappy it is. And even if you spend time in a concentration camp, there will be light moments. And I invested a lot of time trying to create some lightness in that show, because in the first draft, it was mostly depressing. And I just was like, I don't want it to be just a depressing show. So I tried to introduce some light humor, some funny moments, and with The Pink List initially, I said maybe this is just going to be a play. But then I wanted to write music, so I wrote this play and I was like, it can just be a play with music, so maybe let's add a song here, and then let's add a song there. And then I was like, well, if it has a song here and there, it will need one there as well.
Michael Trauffer is a Swiss-British writer, composer, and performer, and the founder of Fabulette Productions, a company dedicated to creating bold, intimate work that explores queer history and identity. Based in London, he works across theater and music, developing solo-driven pieces that combine storytelling, performance, and original song. His work often draws on real historical events to shed light on overlooked LGBTQ+ narratives with a focus on personal testimony and emotional immediacy. His productions include the acclaimed Fabulette 1933 and The Pink List. Alongside his work in the arts, Michael is also a Swiss qualified lawyer. Michael, welcome to What the Fringe.
Thank you for having me, Lauren. Hi.
Yeah, hey. Well, I'm so excited to have you here. I've been wanting to have you on the program for a while. We met in Adelaide earlier this year and got to see each other's show. And I think we connected on social media. And then I met you in person and you were so sweet and was like, come to my show. And I was like, absolutely. And I think I just want to say, like, as a testament to what networking does, the fact that you invited me and you reached out made me really want to connect with you and come see your show. And then, of course, I do reviews, so I got to review it and all of that. And now you're here on the podcast.
It's just a beautiful thing about the Fringe circus. You meet other artists, you connect. I met you and I didn't even know about the reviewing and the podcast, and we just connected as artists.
Yeah, absolutely. And we both have pink shows. So, of course we had to be friends, but I think you're just a sweet, lovely, kind human. And it was just so delightful to get to know you. And I'm just so excited to have you here.
Yeah, I'm very excited. And I'm glad we stayed in touch even after Australia.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's the way the Fringe world works, baby. I'm one of those people that I'm we've met, we're best friends for life. There's no getting rid of me. Well, let's get into it. Let's talk about your journey as an artist. Let's start there. So you started your professional life as a lawyer.
Exactly, yeah.
And then, what drove you to embark in the theater?
I always wanted to be an actor when I was a kid, and I acted a lot as a kid. But then obviously Switzerland is not the country that is famous for the performing arts. When I graduated from high school, I was considering studying musical theater, but I would have had to go abroad. And then, for whatever reason, I studied law, which I enjoyed more than I thought I would, to be honest. Not so much studying it, but then after that, I also worked as a lawyer for a few years. So it was not that bad. Even now, I still do some freelance lawyering work on the side when I have time. But then, yeah, I got to the point where I was like, oh, I always wanted to be an actor. I always wanted to perform. If I still want to do it in this life, I have to do it now. So I moved to London, auditioned for drama school, studied musical theatre. Then it was always a bit like, well, I'm actually too old to do this. Hopefully it will work out somehow. And then I was just quite lucky. Straight from drama school, I got a contract on a cruise ship. And then I worked on cruise ships for a few years. You get to perform every night, which is like coming straight out of school. It's probably the best thing you can do, even though it was so overwhelming in the beginning. But then one of the things about the cruise ships is also that you get cast in a position and do lots of different shows. And sometimes you do shows that really don't suit you. They don't suit your voice. And you're in front of an audience and you're like, I should be so grateful that I get to do this, but I'm really almost a bit embarrassed. And then when I stopped with the ships, I was just like, I want to do things that I really care about. I started thinking about writing my own show. And the thing was, on one of the ships, I had to do a musical gala where I had to sing Willkommen from Cabaret. And I never particularly liked that song. There were other songs which I thought I sang really well, but I think I was the only person who thought that, because after every performance, people came up to me and were like, oh, you were amazing in Willkommen, you were amazing in the Cabaret number, your Joel Grey was great. And I was like, maybe I should think about this. Maybe this is what I should do. It suits my accent, obviously, because I have a German accent. But I also was like, I really don't like this type of music. But then I started researching the whole Weimar Republic, the time between the wars in Germany, the time of when Cabaret is set as well. And I got hooked and I was like, oh my God, this is such an interesting time. And so many aspects of the time that haven't really been told, at least not to big audiences, especially from a queer perspective. And that's how I started writing my first show, which was called Fabulette 1933, the closing night of a cabaret, and just from the MC's perspective with flashbacks on his life, looking at how progressive this time was. And then the Nazis came, obviously, and closed everything down. Germany was in the Middle Ages, obviously, as we all know. And I wrote that show, wasn't really sure. The first time you do a Fringe show, you don't really have a clue what you're doing. You just hope that somebody will like it. And I tried it out in London at the Camden Fringe the following year. It went quite well for the first few performances of a brand new show. Then the following year, I went to Edinburgh with it. And it was, for some reason, this show hit a nerve. I got a lot of attention. I got a lot of reviews and positive reviews. And that's obviously the most encouraging thing that can happen, because if I had received horrible reviews, I'm not sure I would have ever written another show. That show had quite a long life with 2 runs in Edinburgh, but I always stayed in the UK. And then I wrote The Pink List, and I just wanted to kind of stay true to the audience that I had built up, and also to the queer narrative, but not stay in this cabaret environment, because part of it was also of the first show that I was in this look like a corset and just leather clothes and half naked and makeup, which is not really me if you know me in real life. But because I did it for a few years, people started to think that this is my personality, and I just got to a point where I was like, no, I want to do something else. I just found this topic of the Pink List, which is after the war, but it's even more under-researched than the whole time between the wars. I had to do a lot of research for this reason, and just kind of could create this story based on real testimony of survivors, of concentration camp survivors, where I was like, yes, this is really what I want to do. I'm really passionate about this, and I think it will touch audiences as well. So yeah, then I created the Pink List, took it to Edinburgh, took it to Australia now, and now I'm coming to the United States.
I know. Oh, thank you for sharing all of that. It's really interesting how your journey went from lawyer to musical theater to this song that you hated singing made you want to research, which I'm so curious. Is that the lawyer side of you that's I want to dig in and see what's going on. Like, do you enjoy research, and what does your like research process look like?
I do enjoy research, and I think you have to kind of like find something that you're passionate about. Like, even if you have the idea of writing a show and you don't really find the right topic, I think it's hard to follow through with it, because you need to invest so much time to write it and then to produce it. So I always felt like I need to find something that I'm really passionate about it. But then I'm also analytical enough, maybe that is the lawyer in me. And in a weird way, I also think of myself as thinking commercially, which probably sounds weird if you think about the topics of my shows, which is like, this is kind of niche. How is it commercial? But in the niche, it is quite commercial. And that's kind of like what made me do this research. And also just that I felt like I need to listen to what the feedback people give me. And I cannot just like blindly believe that this other song was amazing when everybody tells me this song was amazing. Then I started researching, and for me, that's how I start. I start reading, watching things, just going down the rabbit hole, really. And then you get to a point where I feel anyway, if a topic is right to write about.
Yeah, that's really cool. And are you able to access some original documents? Or, I mean, we'll get into the Pink List in a bit, but I mean, I would think Fabulette 1933, as well as the Pink List, is really steeped in historical fiction. So it's steeped in things that are real. And how do you get access to those documents?
Yeah, especially with the Pink List, I try to like connect with people who had done research to get like more like actual real life first-hand documents, which I hardly heard back from anyone. And if I did, they were like, meh. So there were like still quite a few published things, sometimes not a lot of published stuff, or just a few copies that nowadays are not even on sale anymore. So I think it was mostly finding copies that I could purchase or borrow, which is, I think nowadays the internet, if I compare it to even a few years ago, you find so much on the internet. Also people who are willing to connect with you. I have a really nice story with Fabulette. I used some music from the period from one of the composers who had to leave Germany because he was Jewish and moved to the UK. And then I was a bit like, well, if I want to use these songs, I really should get permission from whoever has the rights. And I'm not even like anybody that anybody cares about. And they'll be like, yeah, I'm going to do a few shows. They'll laugh at me and be like, well, just do it at a Fringe festival. Nobody cares. But then anyway, I reached out to this trust, and then the grandson of this composer emailed me back, and he was like, yeah, of course, we're very happy for you to do it. And also, if you need anything else from us, please let me know. And there was this one song where I had a crappy recording of, and it was so bad we couldn't even figure out the chords. And I told him about it, and he was like, oh, I think I have the sheet music for that one somewhere. And then he scanned the original sheet music and sent it to me. And I was like, this is just so amazing. And these are like moments when you're like, oh, wow, I'm not even a big name or anything, but somebody now just took the time and saw how passionate I was about it and just shared something really rare with me, which is amazing.
That is one of the most encouraging stories of like, just take a chance. I mean, even though you don't have like a famous name, you are somebody and you care about this. And I love that they saw that and probably felt really honored that you were interested in that and wanted to keep alive, this music and who they are, and that they saw the value in that. All you can do is ask, right? They can say no. Who cares? Okay, somebody that I don't know told me no. Or they photocopy sheet music and send it to you.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you make these amazing experiences, and I'm really grateful. I then tried to invite him to every performance in London that I had. He never came. He always was like, oh, thank you for letting me know, but I'm busy. So I was like, okay. He gave me a lot. These are nice moments. And other than that, it's, especially for the Pink List, obviously I was visiting a concentration camp, like one of the camps where the show is set, just to also get a proper feel for like how it must have felt. I mean, obviously it's hard to relate, but you still can feel the sadness and the vastness of these camps. And I think that one of the songs that is sung in the concentration camp in the show I wrote like on the day when I visited the concentration camp. And I think these are things that really are inspirational when you write a show, in the best and the saddest sense, obviously. And just for me, especially going to places where a show is set, means a lot and inspires me a lot.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say all of that. And it's been a few minutes. I've traveled halfway across the world since I saw the show, but just thinking back to it, I think there's something that's very genuine about the Pink List, and hearing you talk, it seems like it's rooted in that of there's like this understanding and sacredness of knowing what these people went through, and the fact that you took the time to visit the concentration camps and do that really good research, it oozes out in your performance and in the way that you've crafted the show and you perform the show. So,
thank you so much. It means a lot. I mean, for me, it is important because the whole point of the story is that most of these people didn't speak up after the war because homosexuality was still a crime. They got sent to prison again. They never were recognized victims. And most of them then didn't speak up, and they didn't get to tell their stories. So at this moment, I'm the one who tells their stories. And I also want to do it in as sincere way as possible.
Yeah, it's beautiful. You do a good job. Let's keep talking about the Pink List, because that's the show that I've seen. And it sounds like it's more who you are. And I love that this song that you hated to sing led you to research a time period, which led you to write a musical in the genre of the song that you hated to sing. And then that like pushed you to write a show that was more like you. Like, that is just absolutely brilliant.
I was like, okay, I will not keep to the period. I'll write contemporary songs for the Pink List. So.
Well, yeah, and it works.
I reclaimed my art.
Very good. Okay, well, I think it's so interesting. Fabulous 1933 and the Pink List, they're musicals. It's a 1-hour solo musical, which can be kind of a bit of a hard sell, and you do it so well. And like, what in the world made you want to be like, I'm going to write a 1-hour solo musical?
Yeah, I know it is hard to sell. And also I know that there's people who have very clear opinions about musicals. And sometimes there's people who are really interested in the topic of the Pink List, for instance, but they really don't want it to be a musical. But then they decide to give it a go anyway, which is a hard starting point for me. And I get both reactions. I get a lot of audience reviews that they leave on the listing page. I got people who said like, oh, we were really skeptical about the musical element, but it really works and we loved it. And then you have the other people who are like, yeah, I still don't like it that it's a musical. And I'm like, well, there's not much I can do about it. I bill it as a musical. For me, obviously, I have a musical background. And in my eyes and in my head, I can only like talk about myself and like how I like seeing shows. I find topics get more accessible in a musical form, heavy topics especially. Obviously, you could argue that a show like The Pink List should be a straight play. It's almost disrespectful of the subject matter to put light moments into it. But I disagree with this view. I think every life has light moments, no matter how crappy it is. And even if you spend time in a concentration camp, there will be light moments. And I invested a lot of time trying to create some lightness in that show, because in the first draft, it was mostly depressing. And I just was like, I don't want it to be just a depressing show. So I tried to introduce some light humor, some funny moments. And with the Pink List initially, I said, maybe this is just going to be a play. But then I wanted to write music. So I wrote this play and I was like, it can just be a play with music. So maybe let's add a song here and then let's add a song there. And then I was like, well, if it has a song here and there, it really needs one there as well. And that's literally how I added songs in collaboration with Sarah Morrison, who is the musical supervisor, and bounced all the ideas off. And she's a musical theatre person. And she was like, yeah, I really like it that you now turn it into a musical. And I was like, yeah, I like it as well. And then the first version didn't have an opening number yet, because I was like, I don't want it to like start with music. And then I was like, No, I think it needs an opening number. So after the first tryout run in London, we added an opening number as well. And I think it works. I know that there's people who still would like it to be a play, but it's a musical now.
I love that though, but it's you as an artist. And that's one of the beautiful things about Fringe is you get to call the shots. You say, this is who I am as an artist. This is what I'm writing. And it works. It does. It's a beautiful show and it works really, really well. It stays true to who you are and the honor that you've been trying to give to those people and those little moments of light and hope all work in the show. None of it felt forced as far as I remember.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm also not trying to not turn it into a lecture. Obviously, there are some historical facts in the show, but I didn't want to lecture the audience. I mean, I have this little 2-minute speech at the end of the show, which you could consider a lecture. I try to still not be a lecture, but I'm just trying to, in case anybody didn't get the message yet, here's in very plain words what the show stands for, and let's fight fascism when it starts and not when it's too late.
Yeah. That worked for me too. All of that worked for me. So kudos. I bring this up. Amber Bjork at Minnesota Fringe, she was on the podcast a couple years ago, and she's talking about there's always going to be people that love your show and people that hate it. She goes, even the Grand Canyon has bad reviews.
All these amazing sites, they get bad reviews.
So, it's like they see it. They're like, I just didn't like the music. Okay, fine. It's not for you. Thank you for coming. I appreciate it. Thanks for buying a ticket.
It will happen. I mean, it happens to us. Sometimes we go and see shows that we're really excited about, and we're in the show and we're like, I'm not, especially when you're looking forward to it and you're excited, the risk that you're disappointed because you have certain expectations obviously is higher, and it just happens. And sometimes I feel like with myself, I also feel like it's just my daily form. There are certain days when maybe I just shouldn't go and see a show, and sometimes I can then even still acknowledge, I think it's a good show, I just didn't enjoy it. And I'm aware that will happen to people who see my show, and I apologize, but thanks for coming and seeing it anyway.
Absolutely. Yeah. And nobody's wasting their time seeing your show, even if it's not their cup of tea.
You still, at least for most people, they're not aware of the topic before they see the show, or at least not in so much detail. And at least they will probably have learned something, even if they didn't enjoy it that much. And it's only an hour.
Yeah. Well, and it's a great way to learn because I learned a lot, watching the show, and it was enjoyable. It was enjoyable to watch and learn that way.
I'm glad you say that because I'd like it to be enjoyable. I know it's hard to say with a show like this, oh, it's supposed to be entertaining, or I want you to be entertained. But I like people to not be put off by how heavy the topic sounds. It is a heavy topic, but I still think you get through the show with a certain lightness is the wrong word maybe, but it kind of has a certain movement in it, and you don't just sit there depressed for an hour.
Yeah, I feel like I left with a little bit of light and hope. You keeping the story alive and highlighting it, and that there were parts of beauty within the show. I didn't leave feeling so heavy, if you will. And that's a credit to you that, an audience can leave feeling that way.
Thank you. I also try to end it on a hopeful note, which obviously in today's world is more difficult than it maybe would have been 5 or 10 years ago. But yeah, in the end, we see these kind of shows because we still believe in humanity.
Absolutely. Well, I want to talk a little bit about the visuals of your show. I'm just curious. I thought the costuming was really good, and you had really quite simple props, which is good, right? You've got a complicated show with music, and you have a pretty simple set, but it's really effective. How did you guys come about designing the show with the props and the costumes? Because it was really beautiful.
Thank you. Obviously, I had my previous show with a cabaret outfit, and I had this big sparkly hat, which was in itself a selling point. At the Edinburgh Fringe, I would just stand on the Royal Mile with flyers. I didn't have to approach anyone. People would come up to me, and I knew I wouldn't have that in the new show because I was like, this is not this type of character. And to a certain extent, I was like, should I even attempt something like this? Because compared to the old show, it does look underwhelming. It's such a different look. I still try to kind of find an identity that goes through the whole show. So it's mostly this look of grey with pink. So the costume is gray, but it has like all these small pink elements. I have these Ottoman boxes on stage which have pink triangles on them, which is all the same pink. So I think it gives it a nice, sleek look. It is suitable for a courtroom, and it's still like subtle enough for like whenever I have flashbacks to then also play a younger character outside of the courtroom or a concentration camp. I think that's the thing. When you have a solo show, especially when you have flashbacks, you try to make it very clear for the audience, okay, there in the timeline are we now? And then you don't have time for an entire costume change. So it's just like subtle accessories that you have to use, which we tried with just a little scout scarf when we're in the time with the scouts, or like reading glasses in the very end and the character is an old man. It's just these tiny elements that only take a couple of seconds to put on stage or take off, and which hopefully make it quite clear for the audience, along with lighting changes where in the story we are. I believe it is relatively clear. You don't get lost in the story.
I didn't get lost at all. And was that something that you and Sarah worked on, or did you have a designer that came in and did that?
It was just me and Sarah, mostly me. But Sarah is great. She's actually the musical supervisor of the show. But you know how it is when you get to the first performance. There's so many things to do. And I had this costume, which was like a shirt, a stripy shirt, which serves as a concentration camp uniform as well when I take off my jacket. And it's the only stripy shirt that I could find that was kind of like the right style without like being an actual concentration camp uniform. It was way too big. And then I was like, I really don't know what to do. Sarah, are you good with sewing? So she took in my shirt and she wrote, we have this list at the end of the show with all names of survivors of Nazi persecution. And we had the work in progress in the evening. And I had this pink list. Originally, we were like, it would be really powerful to just have an empty pink list. But then it was a last minute decision to be like, oh no, I think we want names on it. So we looked up names. And then I was like, but my handwriting is so shit. And Sarah was like, okay, that's why you have me. And I still remember her sitting at my kitchen table, writing names for like 2 hours. Who would have thought that this list would travel that far after this afternoon in my kitchen?
Yeah, it's a really powerful moment. Like you said, I mean, you're doing some education and then you roll out the list and you see the names, you see the handwritten names, and there's something very beautiful and special about that. I want to talk a little bit about your lawyering, because now that I know you're a lawyer, I didn't know that. I was like, this makes so much sense. So was that like intentional of how you kind of work that in? You're like, oh, this is my real life, how the story came together?
I think it was more a coincidence that I found this topic. Maybe it resonated with me because it had this courtroom aspect. But then obviously once I had it, I was like, I kind of like it that my two careers come together in one show now, especially with law and courtrooms. We're so influenced by movies and television that I actually wrote the courtroom scenes. Obviously, the content is true to the original, but the form is more like catering to how people expect a courtroom scene to be than how it actually would have been at the time. Especially for Anglo-Saxon audiences, court proceedings are so different than continental European ones. And I was like, okay, I don't want anybody to be like, this is weird, this is not even a court hearing. So it's kind of like a mix of like trying to keep everybody happy.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, we have to do that. It's like, even when you do accents, like I know when we study accents here in the States, I've got a friend who's like, this is what it sounds like in real life, but you can't do that on stage. You have to make adjustments for people's ears. And so you're making adjustments for people's preconceived ideas of what a court is, and not to make it boring, because sometimes court can be, it's like you're going through very procedural things.
And I also obviously wanted to use these scenes and the interaction with like the judge mostly, which is voiceover, to also be informative, because these are opportunities to kind of like set the scene, like as soon as you have like a second character, and to put in some background information. I was like, okay, I just have to use these moments to set the scene.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to change directions just really quick, because I think it's kind of interesting and a fun little conversation. So Adelaide is an open access festival, but then you apply with different venues, and so the venues are curated. But you were at Holden Street. Were you in Rudy's or Judy's? I can't remember.
It was Ruby's.
Rudy's. And so I remember you saying you were responsible for building out that space of like getting a stage, getting lights, getting all of that. And I was kind of blown away. I didn't realize that you had to do all of that. And it's kind of like independent producing. So tell me, like, what was that process like for you?
Holden Street has like the big rooms, which is obviously fully equipped theaters, but then they have these small rooms, which they then offer to like small productions. Sometimes it's not even like necessarily the type of theater show that my show is. Like it can be anything. And people who might not need theater lighting or something, or a sound system, because the rooms are small there, like a big living room basically. And they offered me the room, and I was like, Holden Street is such an amazing venue. And it was obviously the higher that is really cheap from them. And I was like, I want to do it there. And I think like it would be a suitable capacity, and it would be a suitable venue with the right audience. And then they put me in touch with some company that supplies all of this equipment. I didn't even have a clue how expensive it's going to be. It was stressful because, first of all, I'm not a technician. Like, I can distinguish a speaker from a light. I cannot really like tell somebody what lights exactly I need to achieve whatever look. And I just wanted to keep it cheap. And I also knew, like, well, I cannot overdo it. It's such a small room. I won't need 4 speakers and I don't know how many lights. And then I spoke to this guy, and he was like, yeah, I think that's what you need. That's what you need. That's what you need. And I was like, well, like, I trust you. But it was, especially while I still was in the UK, sometimes I was a bit stressed, and I was like, what if they don't show up? And then I cannot do my show, or I just have to do it with whatever, some big light and whatever, a USB speaker or a Bluetooth speaker. But then they came, and then these guys were like, so how exactly would you want it? And I was like, well, that's where I'd like to have the stage, and everything else, what would you recommend? But then it worked. Like, they did a great job. And in the end, I was quite proud to have properly produced from scratch, like even the venue. But yeah, it was stressful in the beginning. And sometimes I also was a bit like, what am I even doing? Like, I travel all across the world to an empty room and think like I can hire theater equipment, put on my shows, and people will come and see the show. But then somehow it all came together.
Yeah, it did. Well, it's fun. It's like, when do you get that close to a musical theater performer?
Yeah, it was very intimate. And I think for me, because I've done the show a few times now before Adelaide already, I was comfortable enough with the show to be like so close to the audience, because I think the first few times that I did the show, it would have still been a bit intimidating to just like have the people so close. And whenever we had sellouts in Adelaide, we could hardly fit in the chairs that we needed to fit in the room. Yeah, I think the show that you saw was one of these shows.
I was there.
And I think that was also the show where I whacked down one of the lights from the stage. And I was like, my technician warned me like so many times. She was like, we need to tape these cables. And I'm like, no, I know where they are. So yeah, then sometimes I really had to kind of like change the way the show was staged, because I was like, okay, now these people really just sit very close tonight, because I don't know why people do it, but sometimes they sit down and then they move the chair, and then the space that you used to play the show is gone. So yeah, it was very intimate. You see everybody's face. And I had one show where a guy fell asleep, which is like, okay, this is not great.
It 100% happens. And rarely does it have anything to do with your show.
In my defense, I think he was drunk. He came in late. He came in like 5 minutes late. And my technician said he was asleep within 2 minutes. And everybody wonders, why did he even book a ticket?
You know what? You got his dollars. He got to take a nap. And there you go. As long as he wasn't snoring or sleep talking, you're pretty good. Oh, goodness. That's funny. No, it happens. I've fallen asleep during shows. It's so embarrassing. But it just happens, especially if you're in a hot space, or it's been a long day, or, I mean, there's so many reasons.
I have that sometimes when you see a show in a hot space, and then you really, especially as a performer, you really don't want to yawn, but sometimes it's like, it's such a struggle, and it has nothing to do with the show. And you know, like, I would love this show, but it's so hot in here, and I'm just so tired now.
Yep, that has happened to me. So yeah, 100%. All right, well, it's been so fun talking with you. It's like, I could keep talking, but we've got to get to our last question because we're about out of time. So my famous last question, which is, what has been your most interesting or awkward Fringe interaction? Or it can be something heartfelt, whatever little story you'd like to leave us with.
Maybe I share two slightly different things, just very briefly. One of the things that I started doing is that I'm by the door when the show finishes, because I realized with my types of show, some people get really emotional and they want to hug me. And for this reason, I want them to be able to have that moment. And it's nice for me to have the feedback. I don't know how it's for you, but like people then always expect me to be as emotional as well. And I'm like, well, it is an emotional show, but also it's my job. And when I come off stage, maybe I'm tired, maybe I'm exhausted. I'm just not that emotional. But anyway, these are for me the most important moments when I really have people crying and hugging me. And this is heartfelt moments I'd like to mention. Then one of the most interesting Fringe moments I've had is that for my very first Edinburgh Fringe, I had a bigger set with the first show and needed to rent a car. And then a friend that I had, she was like, oh, I know this other girl who also has like a big set and she's looking for a driving buddy. And I was like, yeah, sure, put us in touch. And then we got in touch and we were like, yeah, let's hire a van together. So I had to like share a van all the way to Edinburgh with like this stranger, and we just shared a van. And it's a long drive with a van from London. And now she's one of my best friends. So that is just like a really nice outcome. And I think it's a nice symbol of what Fringe can do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Both of those stories are beautiful. I love to hug audiences afterwards. And I think that is exciting. You know, I had somebody tell me, you know, somebody comes up and oh, thank you so much. They want, you did something that moved something in them and they want to reciprocate and let you know that it moved them, and to just say thank you, and just to like take, instead of, oh, no, this, that, you know, and play it off, you just thank you. That's all you have to say, because it takes a lot of courage to come up to an actor and hug them or do, you know, any of that.
I know, like, I don't like doing that, but I appreciate when people do it to me. And like, it's also like interesting to see what audiences you have, because in Adelaide, I had the curator of the Adelaide Holocaust Museum who came to see my show, and she loved it and she wanted to chat afterwards. And that was like, for me, maybe more important than any 5-star review I've ever received. That like somebody who's a specialist in this field basically approves of my show.
That is so cool. That's cool. I love that. Well, Michael, it has been absolutely delightful to have you on the podcast today. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me, Lauren.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the Pink List is playing at the Orlando Fringe this May, and ticket information is available at orlandofringe.org. And after Orlando, the show continues performances in Vienna in June. You can find more information about the shows and Fabulette productions, including the Pink List, at fabulette.com, and keep up with Michael on Instagram and TikTok at Michael Trauffer, and on Facebook at I am Michael Trauffer. What the Fringe is produced and hosted by me, Lauren Hantz. This episode was edited by Ben Ellis of Renowned Media, and those sweet tunes you hear are provided by Paul Snyder of Orchestra of Sound, and our logo was designed by Ruby Arnold of Ruby Bakes Things. What the Fringe can be found on your favorite podcast platforms and now on YouTube, so be sure to hit that subscribe button so you can stay in the know when new episodes release. Keep up with What the Fringe on Instagram at whatthefringe_productions, and find us online at whatthefringeproductions.com. You know you're going to have a banger of a review when the reviewer
came like 5 minutes late, and my technician said he was asleep within 2 minutes.